This is an induction presentation for the Surrey Hills Mill. The Surrey Hills Mill, located near Hampshire in northwest Tasmania, is operated by Foraco Proprietary Limited. Foraco manages an integrated business for the production of various wood-based products, grown from their own plantation estates, which are predominantly located across the north of Tasmania. This induction will provide information that you as a contractor or visitor will need to know, understand and comply with regarding Foraco's safety, health and environmental requirements for the Surrey Hills Mill. So let's get on with it.
In order to work alone on the site, you must have successfully completed this induction process. You'll be provided a contractor induction assessment form that you must complete competently before being granted unescorted access privileges. Of course, if you require assistance with reading or other skills in order to complete the assessment, please let your site contact know before undertaking the assessment. If you pass the competency assessment, you'll be provided with an access ID card that you'll be required to produce at the weighbridge daily when accessing the site. Passing this induction does not automatically allow you to escort others who have not been inducted.
Foraco have a suite of policy documents that you must be aware of. The policies provide high-level direction as to how Foraco manage environmental matters and occupational health and safety, including drugs and alcohol, in the workplace. Copies of these policies will be provided to you as part of a package to support this induction process. On arriving at the site, you must sign a register at the weighbridge and also make contact with your site representative before commencing any work. The site's management team are Paul Sturziker, Mill Manager, Scott Atkinson, Maintenance Supervisor, and Matthew Fay, Production Supervisor. While within the mill site and outside your vehicle, you must wear PPE. The minimum requirements for the site are helmet, high-vis vest or shirt with day-night reflective strips, steel-cap boots, and eye protection. Gloves and hearing protection may also be required or advisable, depending on your task. Contractors are expected to provide their own PPE. While on site, it is important that you are continually aware of your own surroundings and the hazards that may present. Common hazards around the site include process equipment that may start without notification, loose items can become entangled in moving equipment, and items could fall from above, as well as the risk of falling yourself. Large mobile plant operates across the site, and some locations are classified as confined spaces. High voltage equipment and transmission lines are also common across the site. Loud process areas, hazardous materials, dangerous goods and sharp equipment will also be encountered on the site. Before you undertake any task on a Foraco site, you must first participate in a risk assessment process and, if warranted, obtain a permit to work document from your site representative. If the risk assessment determines that the task is complex or above a medium risk profile, further risk management processes may be necessary. Nevertheless, risk assessment is the first step. The risk assessment form records the basic details of the task to be undertaken, the safety and other risks, as well as the control measures that you will be required to implement in order to do the task without harm to people or the environment. The reverse side of the risk assessment document is the permit to work. A common requirement of this permit is that an isolation or lockout process may be necessary. An isolation is used to control a sudden release of energy that would otherwise pose a safety or other risk. Examples include pneumatic, hydraulic, kinetic or thermal energy. An isolation and lockout is designed to protect you and others. It must be undertaken in consultation with your site representative and be overseen by an authorised site isolation officer. You must only attach or detach your own personal lock to any isolation. Removal of another person's lock or the master isolation officer's lock will not be tolerated. Before commencing any work under a permit, you will be required to sign the document in order to acknowledge you understand your accountabilities. All people undertaking a given task covered by a permit to work are required to sign on to the permit. At the end of the task, you are also expected to sign off the permit, acknowledging completion. Consistent with Foraco's overall risk management system, further risk management protocols are also applied on site. Examples include the Job Hazard Analysis, or JHA, and a series of supplementary specific risk protocols to address confined spaces, working at height, and hot work. A JHA is required where a significant level of risk or complexity is apparent on a particular task and may be developed by a team of people with appropriate expertise to more closely examine and manage risks associated with these complex tasks. The permits work as their names suggest. If, for example, your task requires welding, grinding or gas cutting, then a hot work permit will be required, and this will be identified when obtaining the permit to work. If entry is required into a confined space, then a confined space permit will be required. Similarly, if you're working at height, then a working at height permit will also be required. Again, if these types of supplementary permits are required, this will be identified on the permit to work, and you'll be expected to implement all the risk management protocols that are identified on all of the permits. If you observe a hazard or are involved in an incident that has any safety, health or environmental implications while on a Foraco site, it is a mandatory requirement that you report the issue to your Foraco site representative. This includes near misses, damage to equipment or inappropriate behaviour. If equipment is operational and an emergency stop is ever required, drives are fitted with local isolators and stop buttons, and conveyors are fitted with a lanyard tripwire for this purpose. The layout of the site is shown in a series of maps included with your induction package. The map titled Induction Map shows that the site is bounded by a looped perimeter road with several intersecting roads that pass through various operational sectors. Visiting contractors should take note that the perimeter road in particular is heavily utilised by log trucks delivering wood for processing to chips, and also chip trucks that transport the chipped wood to the burning port for export. So please be extremely vigilant to allow trucks safe clearance distances when driving on the site or when moving about the site as a pedestrian. The arrow shows the location of the car park, which is also the location of one of the site's 2 emergency meeting points. Visiting contractors should also make special note of the 2 large sectors of the site which are classified as restricted areas. Restricted areas require specific permission from the site supervisor before entry. The restricted areas include, but are not limited to, the main log yard, where the log trucks are unloaded, the log yard access ramp, where the trucks move a short distance after they have their load restraints removed, and a series of overhead walkways leading to the chip storage area in the southwest corner of the site, and the chip piles themselves. A summary of emergency procedures can be found posted in work areas around the site. You'll also find an emergency management map in your induction package showing firefighting infrastructure and emergency assembly points. If you need to report an emergency situation, an all stations alert can be issued on UHF channel 30, which is also the main channel for log and chip truck communications on the site. If a fire breaks out, your first response should be to report the fire by raising an alarm. The fire alarm sounds like this. A secondary response, if it is safe to do so, is to combat the fire with the available infrastructure until the site's emergency response officers attend, and thereafter follow directions from the site's response team. If it is necessary to evacuate the site, an evacuation alarm will be triggered, which sounds like this. If you hear the evacuation alarm, move promptly and with caution to the nearest emergency assembly point and await further instructions there. If it is necessary to contact the site's management team directly, telephone numbers are shown here and also printed on the emergency map. There are standards of behaviour that are expected to be observed by all people on Foraco operational sites. Harassment, discrimination, victimisation or vilification will not be tolerated, nor will theft or unauthorised removal of materials from the site. A security search of vehicles on site may be carried out at any time. In accordance with Foraco's drug and alcohol policy, we require that no intoxicating liquor or other illicit drugs are to be consumed on the site, nor should you be under the influence of alcohol or other illicit drugs. Please also be aware that some medications can negatively affect your ability to work safely and protect the health of others. If you are unsure about whether a medication you are currently or were recently taking could be a safety issue, please raise the issue with the site supervisor or manager before commencing any task. Other standards of behaviour include: smoking is not permitted on site. Smoking paraphernalia is to be left in vehicles if brought to the site. Fire hoses are not to be used for washdowns. Do not bring pets onto the site. Wastes are to be disposed of only in identified waste bins and skips. If you bring a chemical or a hazardous material to the site, please declare them at the gate in order that an appropriate risk assessment can be made. The speed limit on the main access road is 40 km an hour on approach to the weighbridge and 20 km an hour as indicated by signage after the weighbridge. Vehicles are not to be left running or unattended without authorisation. Seatbelts are to be worn while underway. And be considerate of all other drivers, particularly of large plant, which have restricted visibility. Contamination. Contamination of the wood production process is a serious matter for Foraco and our customers. Contaminants can cause significant damage to processing equipment and process materials and potentially cause very large financial losses to Foraco or Foraco's customers. A contaminant is any material other than a wood chip which may become mixed in with or becomes attached to the pure wood chip products. Potential contaminants can be man-made or natural. They could be plastics, rubber, metal, oil and other lubricants or fuels, wood other than a wood chip pole base materials, rocks or charcoal. All personnel must make every effort to prevent contamination of production equipment and the chip piles. Vehicles should be cleaned of rubbish like plastic cups, food packaging, rags, etc. before entering the mill site. Offcuts and packaging from maintenance activities must be cleaned up and removed from the job work site as you work and be completely secured before any sign-off. Contamination will not be tolerated. Foraco's industrial sites are managed to minimise environmental risks and impacts. Common environmental issues associated with the Surrey Hills mill include the potential for oil spills and the subsequent disposal of any oily contaminated materials, the appropriate disposal of wastes including recyclables like scrap metals or in some cases, potentially hazardous wastes such as transformer oils. General amenities on the site include change rooms, toilets, washing and crib room facilities located in the main operations office building. First aid, report to the main office. All Foraco staff are trained in first aid if required. UHF radio, set to channel 30, is used for general communications, including an all stations emergency call. Other channels may be allocated by site officers on a task-by-task basis to ensure that overall radio traffic is not compromised. As UHF is a public band, users are expected to avoid profane language while using the UHF. This completes the Foraco site induction presentation. Please complete and sign the induction assessment form and present it to your site representative. After the assessment form has been reviewed, you will be notified by Foraco whether you have been successful in being granted contractor access privileges to the site.